You didn't believe anything that I said. When they came, you were not prepared. Then it all fell right on your head. And now you're lying in your bed. You've got yourself in a rabbit hole. You're trapped 'cause you did not let go. You took that bait and now.
Hey everyone, it's Carrie and Tiffany with Alice Eats the Apple, and we have a new friend today that we want to introduce you to. Michael Christopher. Hey Michael.
Hello. Morning. Thanks
Well-
for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming on. And it is, so we have a friend that we're all good friends with, Sarah Kajawa, and Sarah told me about you probably last fall, and she said you would just love him. He's fun. He has an interesting story, and I don't know. I think we were in the process. We moved out, we moved in, school, kids, boys, and I kind of put the show on hold for a while, just because life sort of got in the way, and I couldn't really focus on that and everything else. And so, and then I think it was last week, your name popped up on Facebook, and I thought, who is this? And it's like this light just sort of kind of went on top of you, and yes, and I was intrigued, and then you and I spoke, and your story, what you do now, is fascinating, but your story is equally so, and I think it's one that needs to be shared, and I think everyone needs to know who you are, and a lot of people already do know who you are, so we're happy to have you here. And anyway, then Tiff, I was telling Tiff about you, and she's like, oh, that sounds really, really great. And anyway, then you two met, and here we are. So here we are. So first of all, how are you feeling? Corona, we're not having to wear masks. That's the great thing about the virtual world.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, and you're in North Dakota, right?
Yes, I am. And it's luckily, I mean, up here, it's, what's that?
Still snowing. It's cold. We're in
It's
April.
26 degrees this morning.
Oh. Yeah, Tiff, it's what here?
84 maybe in Texas.
Oh my God.
That's just starting to get warm.
No.
No longer in the bathroom with the hairdryer on. That's
Well, we were intrigued by your story, Michael, because you are an evidential medium, psychic. That is, and it's something that you weren't born into. I'm sure you've had these gifts your whole life, and that you realized that later on. But you came to this kind of later in life, being a medium, a psychic, connecting with guides and sharing messages. You've had a pretty traditional corporate life, military, and so we want to get into the whole story of how you went from that to doing this incredible energetic soul work that you're doing now.
Oh, it's definitely interesting. For sure.
Take
Say the
us
least, I
back.
should say.
Walk us down your path. Tell us the story.
Wow.
I understand that's one of your missions, is to help people understand they're doing this too. They have their own connection to their guides and their loved ones, and helping people discover that and deliver these messages is sort of your passion now.
It is. And I'll try not to skip around. There's just so much to everything that's happened. But let me start off with the connection first, because, you know, and I'll get into it, but I'm not your traditionally trained medium. I've had very few classes. I feel that we learn from spirit, we learn by doing. Yes, the classes can help you kind of put you in a direction and give you a little bit of, you know, basic understanding and guidance. But from there, I believe you need to do the work yourself. But I wholeheartedly believe that we're all born with the ability to connect. I mean, it's there. And my view or my belief in spirit is they're around us. You know, they're there all the time. They're omnipresent. It's just a matter of us understanding how we connect to them. And I believe because of TV, there's so many different, you know, thoughts and beliefs on how it works that it can become overwhelming and confusing. For me, I'm a simple person. I like to boil things down to the most basic level. If I don't do that, I tend to just get off in the weeds and just get confused. So for me, I keep it simple. But for me, it's just a matter of just choosing to pay attention. It's like a kid. You know, you can ignore your children. You have that sense to just, no, you know, tune them out. That's me. You know, that's most of when I'm just living my day, I tune it out. But when I get ready to just work, it's literally, I don't have to do anything special. And it takes me time to understand that. But literally, I'll just sit here and it's like, I just start paying attention. And that's it. They're there.
Do you feel like you sort of just turn it on? Like it's almost like a gaze. I feel like I had a mom once ask me, we were sitting in a Mexican restaurant, everybody was having wine, and they were like, okay, so we heard about what you do. So can you read me? And it was funny because I felt A, I'd had a glass of wine, and I don't do that when I drink, and B, I was trying to tell her that it's all same thing. It's always there, but there's like a tuning into it. There's a turning on. And I said, no, you know, you don't really turn it on all the time. You just go in, because they also were asking, like, do you always read people when you meet them? And I think on some level we do, but not in that same way, not in that like really tuning in. So I kind of got off topic there, but do you feel like you just turn it on?
Yeah, it's basically just a quick example. Like if we're just sitting here talking, if I was to just tune in now, it's literally like, okay, for me, and I was kind of talking with Tiffany about this, and I'll get into my process. But for me, very early on, I started to sense that when I'm talking to spirit, my awareness is behind me. So that's just naturally where my mind gravitates towards. So I've learned to separate my thoughts from spirit. So I know when I put my awareness behind me, everything that comes through is from spirit. I just have learned to trust that. So that's my process. And I mean, I can get into that a little bit further later, but literally that's all it is for me. It's just to shift my consciousness behind me, and there it is. You know, so that's the most basic. And again, I can further explain. I just don't want to take up too much time in any one area.
We've got plenty of time. Did you have experiences as a child that kind of clued you into this path? No.
I was completely clueless until I was 45, literally. And I can get into my story now if you'd like. I mean, I can just, you know, I can shuffle through that.
Sure.
So again, yes, for most of my life, I was oblivious to this. Interesting enough, and again, my story, it's kind of long, and you know, you can't make this stuff up. But so it started 20 plus years ago, 97. My stepbrother, both my stepbrothers had cystic fibrosis. So in 97, we lost my brother Jason to CF. So that was my first loss, you know, of somebody, you know, my age, a peer, you know, family member. So, you know, it was really tough. And it was 3 years later that's when John Edward came on TV. And we saw the first show, we're like, what is this? You know, my wife had never seen a medium before. So it was just fascinating. So we began watching John Edward. We started reading books about mediums. So fast forward to, not fast forward, 99. I was about halfway through my Air Force career, and I was diagnosed with kidney disease out of nowhere. I was going to start flying planes. I needed a physical. I went to get it. They found an issue. Long story short, I was diagnosed with a kidney disease. At that time, it was fairly progressed. Even though I was not experiencing symptoms, I would have never known it. Basically, I was told that where it is now, chances are it's going to go to failure someday. So that experience in itself, it really taught me a valuable lesson that I had to start living in the present. Because if I would worry about tomorrow and worry, well, when's this going to happen? It was like living with a time bomb. It could go off at any time. I just had to learn to, again, I had to live now, you know, and constantly check myself. How do I feel today? You know, I feel good. So that's all that mattered. So again, it was just learning to live in that moment. Now, it wasn't easy. I'd often find myself starting to go down that path of wondering, you know, and letting it affect my motivation on everything. You know, why should I go to school? Why should I continue? This is going to happen. So again, it could always come back to that. So a little bit further down the road, I'll go to, I think it was 2001. We're from New York. Right after the World Trade Center and, you know, the bombings, my brother Danny was on the waiting list for a lung transplant from CF. So he got the call 2 days after 9/11, go down to New York City. So he had his transplant. Everything was great. Fast forward again, I think 4 years, his lungs started to reject. Luckily, Pittsburgh Hospital took on the task of doing it again. Usually they won't do a second one because the chances of survival are less than 30%. But Pittsburgh Hospital took it on. And I try to keep my dates in line because there's so much. But so that was probably around 2005, 6, somewhere in there. 2009, I retired from the Air Force. A year after that, my kidneys decided we're done, you know, so they started to fail. And I had to start dialysis, you know. Luckily, because of testing and all that I was going through, they saw it coming. So once you reach a certain level of kidney function, you qualify to start looking for a donor. My brother stepped up, you know, other people did, but my brother matched. So this was like May or June of 2010. Surgery was scheduled for mid-September. We get to 2 weeks prior to the surgery, my brother ends up with a staph infection, which turns MRSA, and they called off the surgery. They said he can no longer donate.
And this was the brother that double lung transplant?
No, this is my other brother. I had 3 brothers, 3 sisters, blended family. But so there I am, you know, 2 weeks away from getting off dialysis, and I get hit with this. And again, you know, I have a weird way of dealing with things that I'm very real about it. And again, I think it was just those years of just living in the moment. You know, at that moment, yeah, I was disappointed, but I couldn't let it affect me. I was like, well, that's what it is. You know, I can sit and piss and moan about it, get depressed about it, or, hey, you know, I'm still here. I still feel good. Yes, dialysis isn't pleasant, but it's keeping me alive. You know, so there's still that hope. Not even 2 weeks later, a friend of mine that was in the Air Force with me reached out over Facebook, and he started asking me questions, you know, about kidney transplants. I thought he was just curious, and he was like, "No, man, I want to donate." So, what? You know, out of nowhere. And you know, at the time, I was up in North Dakota. He was stationed in Mississippi. Long story short, Air Force level he had to get Air Force approval to do this because he's still active duty. But once the hospital commanders and everybody got involved, they just pushed it through. So he went through testing, ended up being like a perfect match. We get to December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day. We have the surgery, and you know, everything went great.
What are the odds of a match?
It's crazy. And with him, if I remember right, the nurses told me he actually matched better than my birth brother.
Wow.
He used different markers and stuff like that. It's been 10 years now, but it was just like 1 in a million.
But can you be on for a long time before they find a match?
There are people that wait years. You know, what's that?
And this guy, a friend of yours from the Air Force, just calls out of nowhere and says, "Hey, by the way, I think I want to do this," and it happened to be an incredibly close match.
Yeah, and it's funny because later, I mean, I've known him for years and even before that, but it was funny because his wife, we were talking one day, you know, she goes, "Ever since I've known Stan," goes, "he's always wanted to give a kidney away." I was like, "What?" She goes, "He's always talked about it." He goes, "I got 2. I got to give 1 away." I'm like, "Well, I'm glad I was there for him."
That's a contract thing. He knew that was coming.
Oh yeah. I mean, I look back now. You can see this.
Glad you could help out, right?
Yeah, I know. That's what I told him. I was like, and I also told him, I was like, "Hey, man, thank God we played poker all those years. I didn't take too much of your money, or this might have been, you know, turned out a different way." But
oh my gosh.
But yeah, if you want me to continue on, because there's a little bit more.
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. I can ramble, so I'm just going to tell you that. So
You're doing great.
So, we go through transplant, everything's fine. Actually, I was going back for my first checkup because after the transplant, you do like blood work 3 times a week for almost a month because they just want to check everything. I was on, this was right after Christmas. I was on my way to the hospital because they wanted to, just the first checkup. I did blood work, I think 2 days prior to that. So I get down there and I saw the doctor. I was getting ready to check in to do labs. He goes, "We're admitting you." I was like, "Why?" He goes, "Your numbers are off." So they automatically thought rejecting. So I'm like, okay, again, I'm just like, I'm level headed about this stuff. I'm like, oh, what can I worry about? There's nothing I can do about it. They checked me in. They start doing blood work and all that. And again, their first thing is rejection. Turns out, thank goodness, all it was like a pocket of, they call it, I think it was like lymphatic fluid had built up over the transplanted kidney, which was putting pressure on it, just irritating it, which lab work wise, it was, the numbers were all off. So I had to go through a short, like really short surgery just to correct that. Everything went back to normal. And, this is almost 10 years. It's been fine as far as my kidney transplant. So, if that's not enough, shortly after that, it was 2012, Danny, my brother, his kidneys begin to fail. The medication we take for rejection is very toxic. So, there's all kinds of things, cancers, the gamut. So his kidneys start to fail. He has to start dialysis. They start looking for a kidney for him. I think within a year, though, he started going downhill. He actually started to develop lymphoma cancer in his lungs. And shortly after that, he passed. He passed in 2012 at 42.
Your
so
parents,
going through what
I'm sorry, your parents have one child that had to have a lung transplant, ended up having 2, and then another child that had a kidney transplant.
No, that was me. Yeah. And then my other brother who passed, and Jason, he was 2 weeks prior to getting a transplant, but he started getting too ill and he wouldn't survive the surgery. So they had to take him off the list. So that was my stepfather's children. Yeah. And it was just, for him, losing both of his sons, it just, I couldn't imagine. So again, Danny passes in 2012. 2015, and this is where things get really just, you can't make this up. So I'm at work one day, middle of August 2015. My mom gives me a call and she's like, "Jackie was stabbed." Jackie's my sister. I'm like, "What do you mean Jackie was stabbed?" She goes, "Well, we don't know everything yet, and I need to explain. Jackie and Janaea, which is my other sister, were born to my dad's second marriage. Okay, they're my half sisters. I consider them sisters. I don't get into the half and step brother, their family. But anyway, she said Jackie was stabbed, and I was just like, okay. So later on that evening, we find out more. My sister was a barber, and she was in her shop alone Friday afternoon, 3:00 in the afternoon. Somebody had snuck in the back with the intent of stealing drug money, from the shop, robbing her. So he comes out of the back, confronts her, and she apparently tried to fight back, but he ended up stabbing her in the neck twice. And, it hit the carotid. She barely made it out to the street before collapsing. And before they even got her to the hospital, they said she had a series of heart attacks and strokes. 2 days later, they had to take her off life support. So, and that was 3 days prior to her 33rd birthday. She was the youngest. Youngest. Now, what made it just confusing for me is, and this is a long story too, but Jackie and I never met in person. Again, she was 14 years younger than I am. My dad's second marriage. Going home back and forth when I was in the military it just never happened. Never met. So it was just confusing, I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know, it was just my sister. I never knew her, it's just all these just crazy, just emotions about it. Like I didn't know how to process it. This is where things got really interesting. Gotta get some water from my sippy cup. So 2 months after her passing, I was downstairs working out, and I seen the CU, somewhat Jamie Butler, channeling Eric. I've never found, seen anything like that. So I saw the page and I saw the website. Now, my sister's murder went unsolved for almost 5 months. So I reached out to the group at that time and just said, can somebody point me in a direction of somebody who can help with unsolved murders? So Jan Backey and Linda Hack reached out, and without even asking anything of themselves, they started just helping me. We started talking. They were sending me information, which I would send back home to my other sister. So over that couple months period, talking back and forth, I had this experience one day, and this is what this was the light switch. I had gotten up for breakfast one morning. It was 5:30 in the morning, so I knew I was the only one up. It was just me and my wife. I think my daughter was off to college by that point. So I'm standing there at the counter, and I feel like something behind me. I feel like a presence. I could have swore somebody walked up behind me. I look around, nobody's there. I go about my business, and all of a sudden I see my sister. In my mind, I just see my sister, and she walks up behind me, and she puts her arms around me, and she kind of put her head here on my shoulder, and she was just hugging me, and I could feel the energy. So I'm just like, I had never had an experience like this ever. So I was just confused. I'm standing there froze because I didn't know what the heck was going on. It was just so real. I wasn't thinking of her at the time, so it was just, what's going on here? And it probably lasted 20 seconds, and then I just see her go away, and I feel her just go away. I didn't say anything about this for almost 2 weeks because I was just completely confused on what just happened. My mind is like, is that real? I'm like, I wasn't thinking of her. So all this stuff is going through my mind. One day I'm talking to Linda Hack, and I think I muttered something about it, didn't tell her much, and she validated it. I'm like, okay, so that was real. So that was my first experience with that. And again, with Linda, another conversation, and I'll stop yapping here.
No, this is about you.
We were having a Skype conversation one day, and during the middle of it, I kept hearing this male voice say, "Tell her it's Jim." Again, I'm looking around like, what the hell is that? And again, it's internal. So it was like in my mind, I'm hearing this voice, "Tell her it's Jim." No. So we continue talking. I hear it again. I ignored it third time. "Tell her it's Jim. I passed the cancer." Finally, I was like, I had to stop Linda. I was like, all right, I don't know what's going on. And I told her what I was hearing. She goes, "That's my father." I was like, what?
Boom.
Yeah. And I think at that point she said something like, "Well, you're a medium." And I argued with her. I was like, "No, I'm not." So we had that argument for a little bit. And, one thing led to another. Jan had said, you should probably consider taking a class to kind of figure out what's going on. And it was just a beginner class, basically talking about declarers. That's all it was going to be. It was a good friend of mine now, Mimi, who used to be with CE also. And this is poignant because this is what I tell people. So I take this class. Now, I had been reading. I knew what declarers were in a way. I wasn't unfamiliar with the spirit world and how it operated, in mediums. I just didn't understand how it worked. My mind, mediums saw spirit like they do people. They hear with their ears. So that was my thinking. So I was like oblivious to actually how the process worked. So each week we learned about a new clairer. So week 1 was clairaudience or clairvoyance, whichever one. As soon as I understood that more than 90% of the people who are mediums and communicate with spirit, it's all internal. So you see it in your mind, you hear it with your mind's voice. Once those pieces were put together, I was just like, it blew the doors off everything, because I started then thinking about, wow, I've had these experiences my whole life. I just didn't realize it. you know, because there are times now, especially like when I was in the military, I could see things happening or know that I had to do something ahead of being told or whatever. I was just like, so all this stuff started making sense. Um, and that's really how it started for me.
I have two quick questions for you though.
Sure.
Did you guys resolve, I think you said your brother or sister's Jackie's murder got solved. Did the mediumship help that?
I know a lot of the information that was sent back, and luckily the cops up in New York and the detectives, funny enough, most of my sister's clientele were detectives and police officers.
Oh, wow.
So they knew her.
Yeah.
And the police were actually very open to information from psychics. So that was a plus. I'd have to think back, but I know a lot of the information matched up.
That's awesome.
But they did. 5 months later, they found the guy, and you know, he's serving 25 to life in one of the worst prisons in New York City.
Oh, and when you refer to CE, you're referring to, for those that don't know, it's Channeling Eric, channelingeric.com. Lisa Medhus's journey of her son Eric, and she now has, you know, YouTube's, blogs, and a whole host of mediums that are helping deliver these messages. Okay, so my second question was, do you think that kidney transplant from your friend, do you think that in any way, because I hear a lot of people who get transplanted organs have different experiences that they would never have had before. I'm just wondering if your friend had any kind of link to this. Do you think receiving this kidney kicked off any, I'm just way out there, that's what occurred to me when you were telling the story. It's like, I wonder if the kidney had anything to do with kind of igniting something, or just the whole experience of what you went through.
I think it all did. And I have to go back too, because I almost died as a child too, because I had surgery at one day. I was not supposed to survive. When I was 1 day old, they found a hole in my esophagus.
Oh.
And back in '69, you know, they didn't have MRIs, so it was basically like, oh, we got to open them up. And that was basically it. We're going to open them up and see what we can find.
Your poor
parents.
Can't even imagine. Your parents.
So they didn't think I was going to survive. My middle name is named after our priest, because they just didn't think I was going to survive. And well, obviously I did. But the funny thing is, I've always had this feeling, and it's been validated now, because I've always wondered. Again, I think everything played into what's going on now. Everything, throughout my life. I always had this feeling that I had the choice to leave at that point when I was born. I always thought that I died somewhere, and just decided to stay. So I've always thought about that, and it's just, it's always been there. So I think just all those things combined, facing your mortality, just everything. I think, again, I always wondered why this didn't happen earlier in life, but I know, or I feel looking back, that all those experiences, I had to go through that before this opened up, because now I can understand, I can empathize with people who have gone through this. I've been sick. I know what it's like to face your mortality. I didn't know I'd live through this, just all these different things. So, I think, again, it all had a purpose. I mean, I know that it did. This is just part of it. And I always joke, but I'm like, they couldn't have picked a more sarcastic SOB to be a medium, because I'm like, I'm not your typical, and I use the word woo-woo just joking around, but I'm not that type person. I still drink, I drink beer, I eat meat. I've always said, it's like, you picked me. This is who I am. I'm not changing. I'm not going to become this guru and meditate every day. It's like, I'm happy to talk to spirit, but man, I got to live my life, and this is who I am.
I had a lot to say to that on several parts of that. So when I was born, I took a breath and I ended up having pneumonia, and it was the same thing. They didn't think I was going to live. And my dad, or my mom, likes to tell the story. She said, all I knew were shots, and I was in an incubator. No one could touch me. And she, I don't know if this is true, but she tells a story about how I'd never cried. And she said that one tear, I'm not sure that newborns do that, but like one tear rolled out. And she said, we didn't think you were going to live. And I've thought the same thing, that I think at that point, I decided whether or not, it's sort of almost like a, oh my God, we're back. Do we have to do this again? You know,
Right.
And then I decided to stay. And so Tiffany and I have talked about this a lot. And it's funny because I just wrote something on someone's blog post. I erased it though. Talking about how, like, I've been with Tiff since she stopped drinking caffeine for the most part. I mean, you do every now and then, but very, very little, and alcohol and meat. And I've watched you progress, and it just, you do it because it makes you feel better. But I know that there are a lot of people in our spiritual world that say you shouldn't eat meat, you shouldn't drink, you shouldn't. And I always felt like it was kind of like you're trading one set of rules from the church for another set of rules. Like, I'm not allowed to do this. And I do believe that it's, you listen to your body and you see what feels good. But I remember very early on thinking, my guides told me that if I quit drinking caffeine, then they're going to talk to me. And I really believed that. And then at some point I was like, oh, that's horseshit. That's not, they don't put all the rules on it. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
the channel may be clearer, but I stopped eating meat at one point, and I didn't really know how to do it to get the protein and the iron. And I bruised like crazy. And so then I started to eat meat again. But it is, so it's funny to hear you say that, because I've thought the same thing. So anyway, I just hit two different spots. But your story does not end there. So what do you do for a living? Like, what is your day job?
So yeah, so I was an air traffic controller for 20 years in the Air Force, and when I retired, I continued on with that. I actually stayed with the Air Force for another 5 years as a civilian doing air traffic control. After 25, I was like, I need to part ways with the military. I gotta just get away from this environment. So luckily, one of my bosses that was in the Air Force with me, she actually is the manager at the airport. So she offered me a job one day, and I was like, you know what? Yes, I'll take it. So I've been an air traffic controller now for over 30 years. And interesting enough, last year, I actually walked away for about 6 months. I don't know if you want me to get into that, or if you want me to go back to the mediumship part of it. Because I think I do need to talk about some of that too, about my thoughts on mediumship, but whenever. You tell me when. But yeah, so I did walk away for about 6 months. Last February, I walked away. I just felt like I needed to try this out full time. And again, I had readings before that, and everybody was like, I see you doing this, I see you doing this. I think it's important for people to understand that, you're still ultimately responsible for your life. Yes, people can tell you or give you guidance and see this is going to happen, but still, doesn't mean it's going to work out that way. And I never blame spirit. Well, you told me this was going to be fine. That's not how I look at it. I left my job, and within 2 months, I started having these feelings of just fusion. I started to resent being a medium, because now it was a job. And that just quickly deflated everything. I mean, it took the fun out of it. I almost resented it. And the moment I felt resentment, I stepped back, and I was like, I can't do this. Luckily, I left on good terms, and my boss was like, anytime you want to come back, if there's an opening, you come back. I called her, and I was like, I need to come back. I still had 4 more months though, so it was like a 6-month vacation. But I learned a lot. One, if I never did that, I would have never known. I would have always been wondering. But two, it taught me that, for me at that point, it wasn't time to be a full-time medium. So there's whatever's behind the curtain, whatever's working. It's just I'm still doing the work. But for me, it took a lot of the pressure off going back to work. So again, it was fun again, and it was like I'm doing it for the right reasons again. not to say that later on it might not happen again. I mean, I feel this coming where I am going to be leaving again. It's just that time wasn't right.
You know, Tiff and I have quite a few friends that do this, and it's interesting because it's been my experience that oftentimes it's the beginning, it's the jump off spot. I know I wanted to do it because I realized later I wanted to prove. I mean, for me, it was, see, I'm not crazy. See, you believe me now. And we see these people on TV and they're doing these incredible things. And when people peek behind the veil, and you can't deny that. I mean, like there's no way. So, you know, Emma could have known my father's grandfather's name. It gives you this feeling of, I don't know.
Certainty.
Yes. And it is so profound, and it really shakes people and wakes people up. And so I think that giving people that gift is incredible, but it still feels like it's an on-ramp. And I know that because for everybody coming to you, they really need you right now. And for you, it's something you do every day. And that's the pressure of that. And at some point I would think that would get not old, but you would maybe want to go on to do the next thing, like the next evolutionary thing. So that's interesting that you got that pretty fast. I mean, you got that like right out of the box. So do you have any idea what are you really drawn to?
As far as the work,
Mm-hmm.
the mediumships, you know, it's one thing I think that doesn't get talked about, and I need to bring this up real quick, is the ups and downs that mediums go through. You know, at first, you know, again, I've only been doing this a relatively short time. I mean, almost 5 years. September will be about 5 years. But we go through these ups and downs where I just want to quit. It gets to a point where you can't. I didn't understand it at first, but I'm like, you know, I don't want to do this anymore. And something always pulls me back. But I quickly learned that you got to listen to, you know, that guidance. I was like nonstop. Once I found out this was what I was doing, you know, it was like a new toy. You know, I had to play with it. And I was go for almost 9 months straight. And I just hit this wall where I just burned out. You know, I was doing work, air traffic control and mediumship. And I didn't know enough to stop and take breaks. But it was like Spirit stepped in and just like, you need to sit back for a while. And that's how they do it. I just get to this point where I just don't want to do readings anymore. I need to be real. I need to live my life. I quickly learned that when I have that, it's okay to stop and take a step back. You know, so again, that's all part of the process, but it's a nonstop up and down for me. You know, just feels good for a while. No, you need a break. So
You're human. You're here.
Yeah, and you got to be human. You know, we're here for a reason.
Yeah.
So yes, you know. But as far as what I want to do, you know, I've never set any goals for myself. I really haven't. Literally from day one, I've always just said, put me where I'm needed. That's it. I don't think past today. I don't, you know, because of what I've been through. I don't think about 5 years, this is where I want to be. You know, I've never said I want to be famous. I literally, my only goal is for them to put me where I'm needed. If I just do readings once or twice a week, if that's what's needed, hey, I'm good with that. If I'm to be on a bigger platform with it, great. You know, again, I don't plan anything out because every time I do, they're like, no, this is, you know, it always seems you hit that, no, this is what you want, but this is what you need.
Okay, so I know that that's your outward expression, but what are you personally working on? I mean, do you have things that you may not go out and discuss publicly or blog about, but you're working on it inside, whether it's connection or ascension or aliens, or, I mean, what lights you up like right now?
For me, literally, I'm probably one of the most boring mediums because I just want to talk to those that have passed. You know, that's my goal with this. But the funny thing is, and I've been told this so many times by other mediums, it's like they've always said, it's like you have this ability to connect to those higher realms without even trying. It's like it's something that just happens. And so I've caught myself just working on that because, again, I believe working with just spirit and not too many teachers, I've learned a lot because I know that when I'm talking to spirit, those people that we've lost, they always seem to be parallel to me. That's where I feel them. And it took me years, probably a couple, to figure out where my guides were when I would feel them. And it finally dawned on me one day when I finally forced myself to sit down. I was like, all right, I need to figure this out in meditation, which I don't do much of. But I learned to feel that my guides, when they come in, they're right here. They're like, I can feel them. And it's a female energy, which took me years to understand. But then I noticed, and I think this during a meditation one day, I felt myself going up. And I was like, where the heck am I? And all of a sudden, I just saw or felt seventh dimension. I still don't know what that means. So I started researching it, and I find out that's like the angelic realm, or, it's this other, so I'm like, interesting. So again, this is stuff that I've figured out on my own through just forcing myself to sit down and go, okay. So I still kind of play around with that and kind of work on those things. As far as mediumship, I'm always trying to push myself to be better. I just want to learn how to, have that deeper connection. The thing that's taught me the most is just be patient, and just work with what I have. Don't expect things, people put so much pressure on themselves to get certain pieces of information. You're human. You can only, become aware of so many things at once, and whatever spirit wants to share, I do the best I can, regurgitating what they're trying to get out. So again, I hope that answers your question. I can go in so many different directions with this, but to me, it's just deepening that connection. I would have to say that's what I work on the most, is just.
Well, I can tell you one place that we're going to go, because we had a little session yesterday, because I like to meet you before an interview just to have, a little rapport. And I had said, okay, can I see you in action and do a little reading? And so I kind of watched your process, and I watched you connect with my family. But it kind of became apparent quickly that they were encouraging me to develop my own things. And so the whole session ended up flipping, where you were then guiding me to deliver the messages from your sister to you. And I've always loved hearing messages like Carrie was saying. It's just been such comfort and such certainty of life continues after this incarnation that it has just changed the whole direction of my life. And I've always wanted to give those messages to other people, especially around healing, physical, emotional healing. And so you then had me sitting quietly, feeling your sister and delivering messages for you, which was, oh my gosh, I could feel the fear of, I'm going to screw it up. I'm not going to get anything. It's not going to be perfect. And you're like, normal, 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 normal. Get out of your head. And it's so subtle. It is so, for me, hearing what your sister was saying was so subtle, but I was so excited. And you're like, you validated, like, yeah, I mean, you're on the right track. And you had offered to kind of help me develop So I know you said you're interested to learn to help teach people how to do their own work. And I'm excited to be a student.
And I got to say this really quick, because there's, that what happened yesterday is like an excellent example of, we may want one thing, but the Spirit's like, nope, and that frustrates me in the beginning, because I didn't understand what was going on. I was like, why can't I get clear messages? And this was through one of the classes I took, was, we can want one thing, but if Spirit has their idea of what, Tiffany needs to hear, this is where we're going. And yeah, I felt your father, I felt your mother, and just, it wasn't a clear. And then it just finally dawned on me. It's like, wait a minute, they need you to understand that you need to, figure this out to whatever level. So again, it bothered me a little bit, but then I was like, oh yeah.
No, it made perfect sense. Going through it, we're confused because we thought we had a set thing that we were going to do. And, but it ended up being what I really, really really wanted. And I ordered the book that you suggested, and so I'm excited.
Okay, so I at least they let you talk. My guides told me early on, you're not doing that. You're not going to mediums. I mean, and I have occasionally, but early on, I had one person stand me up 4 times. I had one person right before we were supposed to talk. Her number 2 called me and said her engine fell out of her car. She's never had to cancel before, but I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. And it was like, oh, can I just have one? You know, and it just, and I know that is absolutely true, because Tiffany is a medical intuitive. I mean, that is like the least that she does. And it is incredible to watch it. And everybody that knows her has been saying for years that I mean, she does it. I can feel the minute she clicks in and she starts to read people, she knows exactly what to say, exactly what's happening. And it's amazing, but she has to figure that out. So
and that's
told Michael that
what's funny about that is, you know, I didn't know Tiffany at all. And I think the day before, I kept thinking she was a medium. I kept feeling that was in my head, that she's already a medium. So I didn't know that you weren't actively doing mediumship.
Yeah, you said that. Like, no, but I'd love to deliver those messages, because I think it's so to us. Yeah.
And I got to throw this out because it was something I was thinking about all night and this morning. Because remember when I was kind of going through that process with you, and you were wondering, well, how do you know they're there? How do you feel they're there? One quick exercise that is like most powerful, okay, and it deals with the word imagination, which is so misunderstood in our language. Imagination is not a bad thing. Imagination is what really is this is all about. Because, and it's not that imagination is not real, it is. But real quick, if I was to tell you right now, imagine your father standing off to your left. Just imagine in your mind, can you see your father there? Just in your mind, just imagine your father standing there next to you.
Yes.
You see him? Okay. He's there. That's literally how this works. Now, imagine him, ask him something really quick. And just in your mind, what does he tell you?
An expletive I can't say.
Right away, people would discount that to say that's my imagination. Right now, what you just experienced is how this works. That's the easiest way for me to put into an example of how this works. That's literally how spirit approaches me, is I will just see or feel the spirit, and then I'll just start getting the information. But that's how it works.
Okay, so that is the way I see. I use that same example, but I always say, okay, imagine your wife this morning at breakfast. What did she have on? That's the way I see, and it just pops in. But because I'm visual and I'm a designer, and so I do see things in my head, I can never discern. I mean, I can at times, but that line is very blurry for me. I mean, some of them are just so obvious that it's like, who is that person? Especially when I'm falling asleep. Sometimes I see these people right here, but it is, and usually when you click into your brain that says, who's that? They disappear because you just clicked into your brain, your thinking brain, your human brain.
Yep.
But how do you sustain that? And how do you discern between the two? Like, one is I'm conjuring up what this room would look like with red drapes versus Michael's sister's here.
Yeah. It took me a while to understand that and trust it, because literally I always say there's a fine line between being a medium and being batshit crazy. It literally is a line.
It is very yeah.
But for me, again, it goes back to practicing and trusting. But now in my mind, I can think things up. I know what I'm thinking. I know when I'm in my head. But again, it just took me practice to understand, again, shifting my awareness behind me. When my awareness and my consciousness is behind me, I know it. Everything that comes through from that point on is spirit. And I've just learned to trust that.
So I wonder, okay, so Tiff, I don't know if it was Jamie or if it was Georgia, one of them said that in her mind, she said, okay, guys, you're everywhere. So I need the maternal side over here, and I need the parent over here. So like she orchestrated it in her head, and they knew, okay, that's where we need to be. But I also wonder if when you say that, when you click in, that is their sign that, okay, I'm open.
Let me get this thought out, if you don't mind. Or I'm sorry, were you addressing that? Okay, because that's important, and that's another thing that just I think it was my very first teacher, Mimi. Literally, she's like, you got to write out your intentions and your boundaries. Boundaries with spirit is like critical. I remember writing out, it was like 2 pages. This is when you're allowed to come talk to me. This is where you're not allowed. I don't want you in my bedroom at night. I wrote out such detailed things. Literally, when I sit down in this office, I'm ready to work. That was one of them. But one thing with me, and this is, I don't know if this was intention or it just happened that way, but yes, when female energies come through, they're on my left. Males are always on my right. From there, I just sense, like, I feel the female, then all of a sudden I feel like a relationship. I feel this is mother. I feel this is grandmother, cousin, brother, whatever, friend. It's just through practice and just repetition, that's just the way it's happened for me. So yeah, I'll feel a male on my right and female on my left. Guides, if it's your guides, my guides are always up above me. But again, it just became, practicing with it and just trusting, and that's usually how it works, like 99% of the time.
And so you are doing your air traffic controlling, but you're also, your website is michaelchristophermedium.com. So if people want to contact you, and your prices are very reasonable. I see you're having sort of a quarantine price reduction right now to kind of make things a little more affordable. So michaelchristophermedium.com is how people can find you to have their own. And are you enjoying the process right now? How do you feel when you deliver these messages after a session? Do you feel energized, or do you feel tired?
No, it usually doesn't. I don't usually get worn out like that. It's interesting, and there'll be times literally I'll sit down in this room and there's a blank wall in front of me, and I'll just look at the wall, and because I never want it to be lost on me what is going on. But I'll sit there and I'll just I talk to people that are past, and I'll just sit there and I'll think about this, and I'm like, holy shit, this is real, this is happening, because a lot of times I'm like, is this real? Am I really doing this? Did this mother's son just tell me that the way he lets her know he's around is by farting? I'm like, it's just like, I just sit there and it's just amazing.
Well, you're used to having voices in your head because you're talking to pilots, and you're used to being the best communicator.
Air traffic control is the best training aid that can prepare anyone for being a medium, because we're so used to doing like 5-6 things at once.
Multitasking.
3 or 4 different people talking and being able to understand all the conversations at once. It's the ultimate training for multitasking, and be able to talk to you in spirit at the same time and be able to just keep that going. It's, again.
And what does your wife think of all this?
Seeing that we were fans of just mediums, when this all came about, it was like a new toy. She's like, what about this? So it was just like, I've been lucky that I have been met by very little resistance. And for me, I think, again, it comes with age, that I don't really care what other people think. I'm not that type person. One thing that keeps me going, and I think it's important for people to understand, because, a lot of people we feel criticism, it can really affect you. And we want others, we value other people's opinions, but it can also be a detriment. You always wonder, well, should I tell this person? But what will they think about me after I tell them I do this? So there's always that battle. But for me, I always think, luckily, again, I've had good luck, maybe. I haven't been criticized too much, but for me, I always keep in mind the expression or what I did for somebody to deliver a message. That's what I keep in my mind, as opposed to the people that want to criticize me and say this isn't real. I don't care what they think. You know, that's not going to stop me, because I just keep in my mind, I just help this person realize that her son's not really gone. Yes, physically gone, but she's going to see them again. She's going to see her son again. So I just try to keep that in my mind, you know, and that's what keeps me going. I just hope that can help other people. It's like, you got to realize what's more important, stopping because somebody doesn't believe what you do, or keep going because you can deliver these messages. Yeah. So it's like, but I don't care what people think. So that's just me.
Well, I have a guest, a surprise guest that wants to say hi. You ready?
Yeah.
1 second. Boom.
Boom.
Hello.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hi. Hi.
Hey,
oh my God.
Oh my God. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Good. Carrie, your hair
Good.
looks great.
Thank you. You want
What
one?
about mine?
Yeah, I do.
Your
I
hair
need
looks
one.
good,
I
Michael.
need one. Yeah, Michael,
Well,
your
did my hair?
Your hair. Yep, you did a special occasion. It looks great.
Welcome, Sarah Kajawa. Hi, honey. We miss
How are
you.
you?
We have play dates all the time where we get together and we just spend these hilarious days, you know, with our little tribe. And being in quarantine, I miss you.
We're going to have a house.
No, a few more weeks. A few more weeks.
Well, I wanted to say thank you, Miss Sarah, for introducing me to Michael. I was telling him that you had told me all about him back in the fall, but with the move and kind of putting the show on hold for a while because of the move, we didn't connect until recently. So thank you for that.
He's awesome, huh?
Again. Yeah, we're gonna talk about him here. We talk in front of a space.
Yeah, we talk all about pros.
Wonderful. So you guys, now how did you two meet?
Oh, wow. It's been a while, but
Yeah, it's been a while. I think through Mimi, actually. I think when I was following Mimi, because she was one of your mentors, right? So I think it was back then. It's been a while, 2, 3 years, 3 years, maybe longer than that, maybe 4 years. That and then we were gonna try to do something together. Maybe that'll happen in the near future now. But so
Sarah, also a medium,
Yep.
and doing grief differently with Sarah and Adam, and that'd be fun to see you guys tag team and do like a readings together.
Yeah, that would be fun. It would be fun. We have the same sense of humor.
Yes, we do.
Oh man, it's only fun to be had. Oh, which by the way, I will drop down how you can find Michael, but it is michaelchristopher.org is how you find
michaelchristophermedium.com. I thought
either or actually, because I had the .org website first, and then I actually could do the other one. So both of those addresses will bring it to my site.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, Tiffany, say yours again.
michaelchristophermedium.com, but michaelchristopher.org. And Sarah, what's yours?
SarahKajawa.com. And I have the Facebook group, Doing Grief Differently with Adam and Sarah.
Yes. So this is really fun. So, okay, this other person, we need to meet her. Mimi?
I don't know where she is on her journey. Michael maybe can shed light on that.
Yeah, she's we're really good friends. She is actually pulled back a little bit and enjoying just going to school right now, finishing her college. So she's really backed off the spiritual stuff right now. She does tarot card readings every now and then, but it's mostly just fun. So she's kind of pulled back just a little bit. She needed that break.
Yeah, well,
It sounds like that's pretty common then. Sorry, Carrie. But Sarah, do you find that too? We were talking with Michael about how sometimes when you're doing so many readings, you become a little overwhelmed or resentful of it and kind of taking a break and doing something else. Do you find yours kind of ebbs and flows like that?
Ebb and flow, but I've kind of learned to say, okay, I need a day in between. So if I do readings, say on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, it gives me that chunk in between.
Yeah.
Right. To kind of get back. If I do too much, it pulls your energy. There's not that balance.
That's a pretty common issue for mediums to not stay. I know my friend Georgia, she spent so much time sort of up and out of her body doing these, that her body physically was getting sick. She was having a lot of medical issues because she's like, I'm not in my body. I'm out here talking to spirit too much.
Yeah.
So, and her big message was stay grounded, be in your body, do other things besides it. So it sounds like that's fairly common.
It is. And it doesn't get talked a lot. It doesn't get talked about a lot, you know?
No. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just try to spread it out and everything. It'd be like if you were overworked and just in your regular job, you know what I mean? Yeah. You've got to have that balance. Always kind of checks and pluses and kind of figure out and kind of, like you say, ground. I've turned off, like the past 6 weeks, I've turned off all pings and notifications. So if they come up or I'm waiting, I'll check, but I've turned off all sounds because more people are asking questions, you know, because they're in their form of grief, everything that's going on. So I've just kind of like, I have to stay grounded so I don't have to, if I want to check messages, I do, you know, and those who are close to me have my cell phone number. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When you hear the ping, you automatically want to go check it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's a smart. And
it takes me back to when I would worry about Adam, you know, when I was so worried because I knew he was going to have a short life. It would take me back to running to the phone because that was landline too, right? Or before, you know, unlimited texting. So it takes me back to those days where like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop when the phone rings, you know, before my awakening. So I've learned I can just disregard it. There's nothing urgent. Even if someone comes up or messages me and says it's an emergency, it's not an emergency. I've realized that there are no emergencies, and that's
I'm not going to say it right, but it was some kind of meme about how, you know, the woo-woo used to be the ones that were thought were crazy, but now we're in this COVID-19. We're the ones that are calm and centered, and everybody else is kind of going crazy.
Right. Yeah, this feels good. To me, everything feels good to me.
And having this connection and reassurance and just knowing that life continues, this is all part of a grand plan, and that we're learning so much from going through this. Are those the kind of messages that even in this time that you're continuing to convey? I mean, I'm sure those are the reassuring messages from spirit that you guys are getting.
Mm-hmm. That's all I get. I don't get any. I've never gotten anything really. I shouldn't say that. In the very beginning, and Michael too, all of us, you get those things where you're not sure, you're wobbling back and forth. Is that fear-based? Should I give that message? You know, all that. But that's just learning more about your mediumship skills and connecting with yourself and getting out of that root chakra. Yeah.
That's it right there. Well, I was going to tell you this funny thing, Michael, and Sarah, you weren't there. It was my phone just said, Siri, you know, what can I do for you? It's like, no, Sarah. So Tiffany and I it was very early on, and it was the week before we had
Elisa
from channeling Eric the very first time. And it was Kira, a friend of ours, Tiffany, and myself, and we were in the studio. And I have this thing with Elvis, huge thing with Elvis. And all of a sudden, he pops in. Eric was there. He popped in. Elvis was there, but he was younger. And it was very much the yes, ma'am, I'd say in his early 20s. And the reason I know, number one, it was that, Michael, what you were talking about, it was that this is so out of the blue. And he was sitting in a chair. They were both, I mean, I could see them. I mean, they were over, but I turned bright red.
She got giddy. Like a little girl.
And I couldn't talk, and my face was hot, and I mean, having a visceral reaction to a thought that, I mean, it has to be one little sexy thought to have. No, I'm kidding. But it was so now, have you ever, do you get pop-ins with Eric also, Michael?
Not since I kind of just pulled back from CE, and this is probably a few years ago. Not since, but I remember he set off my fire alarms one day, or smoke alarm.
Me too.
I was talking with Linda Hack one day, and I don't know if I said something, because I think it was something along the lines of, she was talking about pranks, and I was like, well, never done anything to me. And we're talking, and I swear to God, it went off, and I go running up and down my hallway, like trying to figure out why. And all of a sudden, he popped in my head, and it stopped. Son of a bitch.
He set it off at my house for sure. He set the sprinklers off on me too once.
Isn't that funny?
But yeah, we used to, one of my early things, and this is where I think people started figuring out who I was, and I didn't realize this. Mimi has a site or a channel called Psychic Punks on YouTube.
That's Mimi?
Yeah.
I love that name. I've seen that.
So when I was a student of hers, and this is what tripped me up, because it was like after, she had like 3 different classes, a beginner, intermediate, advanced. It was after the beginning one and starting the intermediate, she's like, hey, would you work on a project with me? And I was like, okay. She told me what it was, and it was interviewing celebrities. She does it a completely different way, though, and I can go in that process some other time, but I'm like, well, I'm just starting out. And she's like, no. She goes, I've worked with mediums, and there's something about you that you can do this. I'm like, okay. I didn't realize at the time these were going out on YouTube. We would interview like Freddie Mercury, you know, Prince, Muhammad Ali, some others. So all of a sudden, these people are messaging me, and I'm like, well, how did you find out about me? Well, you're on YouTube. I'm like, no, I'm not. You know? And so yeah, so we would interview. That was just a trip. I mean, I'm like, why is Freddie Mercury? I got to explain though how it worked, because it wasn't like intentionally sat down. Yeah, I want to channel Freddie Mercury. The way she would go about it is like just keep in your mind who you'd want to hear from. Like, okay. All of a sudden, I was like, I started seeing Freddie Mercury everywhere. I'd be in a store, I'd see something about him on a magazine. All of a sudden, I started wanting to listen to Queen music. And I'm like, I haven't listened to Queen for years. And it took 2 weeks of him like, hello, I'm here. All these signs, I was like, finally, I was like, holy shit, it's Freddie Mercury. You know, so I was like, it just tripped me out that I was like, this is happening.
We love Freddie. We all love Freddie. This sign right here says, love your life, darling, from Freddie. He gave me that message. I was listening to something, and I just heard him say, love your life, darling, you know, in his voice. So
maybe that's why yesterday, literally, I was being drawn to that picture, and I didn't know why. I kept looking at it. I was like, there's something with that.
Peter Max's angel. I got to meet the artist, Peter Max's angel, but yeah, that little sign is, so I wrote it down to put on my board. Just remember, love your life, darling.
And guess what I watched yesterday? Bohemian Rhapsody.
Bohemian.
No way.
So good.
Him and I interviewed him a while back. He's funny. He's light.
Michael, on your web, it also says astrologist. So are you big into astrology too?
No, the thing is, when you have to pull up a tag for Facebook, that's the only option.
I should have asked you that before. Okay, you're an evidential medium, and I know that's a big deal to say evidential medium, right? So it's the way you connect with evidence from their life.
It's interesting, and again, I didn't pick that title. Mimi did, because I didn't know what any of this was. She's like, "You're an evidential medium." I'm like, "What is that?" She goes, "That's what you are." And she explained it. So I'm like, when it came up to a title, I'm like, well, I guess I'll put that on the website. And then I figure out what it was. I'm like, oh crap! Now that puts so much pressure on you. But it literally, it's, you know, and someday when my head is clear, I want to do a reading for both of you because I want to show you what I do. But the things that come through for me, it's just so weird how it just happens. But so many times they'll just show me like what's going on. Like, you know, were you out in your kitchen? You know, example, I was talking with Mimi the other day, or we were online or something. I was doing something online, doing readings online for like a show. I forget which one. But I kept seeing this image of this woman putting a light bulb in, and I felt grandmother. I kept feeling diabetes. She passed the diabetes. And there was something about this light bulb, and it was Mimi. And she didn't even think about it first. She goes, oh my God, that was me. She goes, I was doing that. I was putting this light bulb in yesterday, and you know, so that was her grandmother popping in. But they tend to just show me stuff that's going on in a person's life. You know, it's not really talking about their personality. Yes, they will get into that, but it's more of, you know, oh my God, the examples, I could go on and on, but it's just in your face, you know, yes, I'm still there with you.
I remember one time John Edward, one of those early days, he was saying, I see somebody throwing cheese at a cow. And these girls are like, yeah, we were joking around throwing cheese slices on a cow. And they're like, I mean, you can't make that stuff up. That's about as concrete evidence as you can get, you know?
No, I mean, there's so many that stick out in my mind. I mean, real quick, one was I mentioned the mom whose son farts, but that was like very early on. But one of the things he was showing me, I'm just, one of the things he starts talk about the water balloon fight at the cemetery. I'm like, okay. And she was like, yeah, we were at the cemetery the other day having a water balloon fight because that was something we did as a family after like our ball game. We'd go out in the backyard and have a water balloon fight. She goes, he said something about popping the water balloon. She goes, oh my God. She goes, I had put a blue water balloon on his gravesite and it popped. I'm like, how do I know that stuff? So it's stuff like that, or he used to tie his sister to the chair by her hair. He was telling me that. I'm like, how would I know that? It just amazes me. And again, it's not like I purposely try to get that information. It's just, that's what they share with me, So if that's what evidential means, okay, I'll take that title, but that's pretty much, again, let me just throw this out there. There's so many titles and so many boxes that people try to put mediums in. I think we're all the same, no matter what our titles are, it's energy work. So if people want to call me an evidential medium, great, but there's no difference between me and anybody else who does this work. We just do it in our own way,
And what am I trying to ask? What do you think the biggest driver is for doing this work? I mean, I know what it is, but I want to hear you say this for everybody else.
I think for the people that are in this work for the right reason, it's given a person a chance to at least consider that we go on after we leave this physical life. Because I can't prove, no matter how much evidence I give you, I can't prove it to myself that we go on. Am I 99% sure? Yes, we go on. Until I'm there, I can't prove it. So the only thing I can do is provide evidence from those people that are coming through giving me the message. So for me, it's just, at least getting people to, again, I can never say, let me prove this to you, and yes, you're going to believe this afterwards. If I can get them to at least consider the possibility that we go on after this life, then I think I've done my job. That makes sense.
No, it does. I just find it fascinating that we're here for such a blink of an eye, and we wake up from the dream that is life, yet we have such a hard time really buying into the fact that there's life after death. I mean, I think so many people, I know that when I used to go to church really before I woke up, it was, I sure should hope so. I hope there is. And so, I don't know. I just think it's interesting that when we sit on this side, we have absolutely no recollection. And I was sitting one time in my backyard, and I get really flexed with this whole idea that we have to forget everything when we're here. And I was laying down, and Sarah and I had this experience, or actually we all did in New Braunfels, but I'm laying down in the backyard and by myself, and it was night, and I was looking around, and I thought, I get it. I finally get it. We're born into this world. We forget. We have to acclimate to whomever we're born to live. I mean, as infants, you have to have someone take care of you. Then you break away. I mean, and some people have a horrible experience when they come in, and some people have beautiful, childhoods. But either way, you have to break away. And no matter how bad it is, we still find love. We still get married. We still have children. Some of us, I mean, some of us do. And in my experience, I get it. It's all about how far away, as Tiff says, how far away from the light can we get to find our way back? And then I cried, and all of a sudden, Sarah, I look up in Houston, which is, we have 5 stars max because the light it is, and I see this whoosh, like a shooting star and then it turns around and it goes the other way. And they were saying, yep, you got it. And so it is for me, I know there's life after this. I just know there is. There can't not be. Yes, at times I think, I wonder if during the death, the NDEs that people have, there's a chemical reaction that they see their whole life again. Nah, that's not true. And so, I don't know. Anyway, for whatever all that's worth. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I think we have to stay grounded because we got to remember why we're here. To me, this is a big classroom. This is the part I'm playing as a person.
You're an avatar.
And that's why I said earlier, again, I haven't changed who I am. It's just because now I talk to the people that passed. I'm still going to eat meat. I'm still going to be Michael. I'm going to be that obnoxious Italian-Irish jackass. Cynical, sarcastic. That's me. Again, I always say they picked me. Yes, I'm here. I can't put into words how much I appreciate that I can do this for people, but I'm still me.
Right.
Well, and I want to thank you, all of you, actually, for saying yes to your gifts and saying yes to this, because in my early days, the messages from the mediums that I trusted their energy and I knew their intentions felt right, it was life-changing for me to get those messages of love and healing. And it opened up a whole new world to me that I have just never stopped exploring now. So what you guys do is so important and it's so valued, and I just appreciate that you do it with love too, and integrity, and that your heart's in the right place. So I thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You can feel it. You can feel it. You can feel your clear channel. You can feel that there's no ego involved. You're not doing it for any other reason. And so Sarah's the same way. Thank you, Sarah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Been quite a ride.
Yeah.
Quite a ride.
The ones that are doing this for the right reason will be around for a while. The ones that are in it for the wrong reason, they eventually, it just takes, universe takes care of it naturally. They just kind of fade away.
They fade away, or hopefully they find it. Hopefully they find the right reason, or they're reminded why they got into it. Because I believe we all get into it for the same reason. I mean, I'm not like you, but I think.
Yeah, I think so. Go ahead, Tiffany.
Just real quick, I was going to say, I think when you connect with a medium who's willing to teach you how to do it and get your own messages, I remember going to some in the early days and like, oh, you have a curse on you. You have to come see me 20 times before I can, you're like, okay, obviously the intention is clear. But when you're willing to talk with someone who wants to teach you how to do it for yourself.
Uh-oh.
Oh, she froze up right in the middle of a word.
Oh. There you are. You froze.
I was saying, just when someone's willing to help you on your journey, that's the good stuff.
It is.
Yeah, that's more of my bigger purpose, is to help. If I can do it, everyone else can do it.
Yeah.
At whatever level they want. Mm-hmm.
Whatever, Sarah.
Whatever.
Well, guys, thank you so much. This has just been fun, and I think we could probably talk all day long. It is.
Yes.
But I think it'd be fun to hop on and do a live at some point and let people just and it'd be fun to watch you guys go back and forth, and we can bet the people coming through, and Tiff and I'll read the questions, and you guys can.
Sure. And you guys can join in too, because I'll help build for you too.
I'm gonna practice. I'll practice.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. We can kind of do team effort on the messages. That would be kind of fun.
It would be fun.
Because one of us might get one nugget, another one might get another nugget to add to it. Yeah.
Yep.
So when I read with Emma, or when Emma and I used to do the shows, we do the celebrity shows. It was fun because sometimes I could see it. I could see what they were saying.
Right.
So it was really fun to be able to tap in, to ride that tail and tap in. So yeah, let's plan that. We'll plan that soon.
Okay.
Yes,
sounds good.
That would be so much fun.
Everybody, stay safe. Thanks for joining in.
Yes. And Michael, were you about to say something? You want to leave us with one last thought?
Oh, I was just going to say to Sarah, Chris Farley's definitely going to be there, because we've been planning this or wanting to talk to Chris forever.
Sarah, there's some sort of
He said you're damn tootin'.
Damn
Is
dude.
that Carrie?
No, I was just laughing because I see what I see right now is Chris Farley and Sarah, especially, they're showing up for me as the same color, if that makes sense. Like the same vibrational coat. So,
I'll take that as a compliment. Yep.
all right, guys, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon. Reach out to them and just say hi and look out for, I'll put it out ahead of time. So then when we go live, people will know to look for it because we're all just home hanging out. So that's wonderful. All right. Bye.
Thanks for having me on.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much.